Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. Trust Tottenham Hotspur to put a lump of coal in our stocking. Have we really been that bad? Have we been that naughty in 2024? Maybe we have. Maybe this is what we deserve. I kind of feel like we don't. I feel like we deserve better. I hope you had a good Christmas before Tottenham Hotspur came along and did their very best to spoil it for you. I had a very good Christmas Day until Boxing Day arrived and completely spoiled it. Just to show you something that might make you smile from Christmas Day, my youngest daughter made this for me. It might look kind of familiar. I thought it was excellent. I was very impressed with that. So it's very late at night right now. You might be watching this in the morning. You will be watching this in the morning or later in the day. You will not be watching it right now because it's very, very late in the early hours of the 27th now. I thought to myself, you know what? I've driven back from Nottingham, got all my work out of the way, ripped my talking points for the morning and everything. I still feel this burning desire to get things off my chest about the match at the City Ground. So this is as cathartic as, for me, as it probably is painful for you to listen to. And it's been a long day. Boxing Day, definitely not as good as Christmas Day at all. Boxing Day brought the ghost of Christmas past. It came back to haunt Tottenham Hotspur, although technically Nuno Espirito Santo didn't actually make it to the festive period during his brief tenure in North London, did he? So I'm still going to call him the ghost of Christmas past because it fits the festive narrative. He obviously represented a very awkward past for Spurs, especially coming back and beating Spurs. But I guess for Postecoglou, he'll be more concerned that there might not be a Christmas future if this, painful present doesn't ease up sooner rather than later. Because, it's not nice right now. Look, if you just want to sum up the ridiculous squad situation going on right now at Spurs, only look at the centre of defence at the end of this game, where Bissouma was partnering 18-year-old Archie Gray. Two central midfielders at either end of the age spectrum. Obviously, Bissouma is not an ancient old man, but he is 10 years older than Archie Gray. Two central midfielders playing in central defence for Spurs because Postecoglou did not have a single one of his four centre-backs available. And you know what? The irony of the game at the City Ground was that after all the criticism that came Spurs' way, of course, for conceding 6 against Liverpool, which is quite right. Again, although it was the first time they've lost by more than a goal this season, it was still rightly justified to concede 6 goals at home. It's disgraceful, it's embarrassing, whatever you want to call it. But the kind of irony, I thought, that actually the defence as a unit, one moment aside, but that was more midfield for me. The defence did pretty well on the whole against not only Forest, but of course Chris Wood's aerial threat. Chris Wood is a pain in the backside for any defender. He has proved that this season. He has proved that to Spurs in the past as well as at Burnley, wasn't he, beforehand? But like I say, one occasion. One occasion is all that matters in football, unfortunately. And it was this moment when Spurs midfield went completely AWOL. 28 minutes into the game, and Morgan Gibbs-White is just allowed to burst through the centre. And then, to be fair to him, plays an absolutely beautiful ball into the path of Anthony Elanga, who, he's no slouch, speeds away. Destiny Doggy is just in his wake, and he kind of pokes this very nice shot past Fraser Forster. It was a good goal from Forest's perspective in terms of the execution. It was a terrible goal for Spurs to concede in terms of the midfield had just vanished somewhere. The Doggy was left chasing shadows, really. It reminded me a little bit, later on we saw that again when in the second half James Maddison was trying to commit a foul. I cannot remember who it was on now. You might remember it. And he was like trying to pull this person to stop them running away, and he just completely misses it and falls flat on his face. And it's kind of summed up pretty much. I mean, he was on the pitch for the first goal, but it summed up really where Spurs were at for that first goal. But like I say, it was such a shame because that was kind of an aberration from the performance. Overall, the defence dealt really well with a lot of the stuff. They dealt well with set pieces. They kind of did a lot of the things that had been criticised for not doing well in the previous game. Just shows how it is. Like, that is Spurs, though. That is classic Spurs. The last game, conceded 6, but they scored 3, should have scored a 4th, really. This game, they kind of mostly defended pretty well. I know mostly doesn't really mean anything in the grand scheme of things if you're going to concede one crucial match-winning goal. But at the other end of the pitch, couldn't get the ball in the net. One of those rare occasions they haven't been able to score this season. It's just mad. And of course, that goal then allows Forest to sit back, stay very compact, and mostly shut up shop. Although Brennan Johnson still had a hat-trick of very good chances. Brennan Johnson, again, spoken about him, about the big chance he had against Liverpool, and he had another 3, really. First one was before the Forest goal. Rodrigo Bentancur does a first-time pass out to him, and he's out wide, hits it across, and Sells kind of pushes it out. That was probably the one that was maybe the easiest for the keeper to get to. Second one, Kulusevski does really well, gets to the byline, pulls it back into Johnson's path, he makes a good run, and he fires a powerful effort that Sells acrobatically tips over the bar. And then the experienced Belgian goalkeeper makes it a trio of saves when you watch it back, I didn't realise quite how good the turn from Johnson was in the box. Jed Spence heads it back in from some kind of set piece, I can't remember if it was a corner or what it was, but he heads it back into the box. Johnson does this lovely touch and turn in the 6-yard box, and Sells recognises the danger straight away, rushes out and makes a really good save from him. So, yeah, it's not like... It's really difficult because it's kind of going to be painted, I guess, as a game where Spurs struggled to really get through. And, of course, they didn't score, so that's going to rightly be the narrative because they couldn't find a way through ultimately. But those 3 occasions, just one of those goes in, it's probably a completely different game. But, it was a frustrating game. It really was. At the other end, Forest... Probably the only moment of note in terms of their attacking endeavours after that was they had a little kind of flurry within the space of about 20 seconds, let's say, where Forster palmed away a cross. I think it was Gibbs White got to the follow-up. He got it before Wood, Forster did. Ball went out to Gibbs White. Gibbs White comes inside, and Forster actually made quite a good save, deflects it away. The ball kind of still stayed in play, but didn't really get back to the goal. But 1 goal was all they needed because, even though they're the Premier League's second highest goal scorers, Liverpool have overtaken them again. Spurs, could not get that ball in the net. And for Sells, the probably killing the pronunciation of his name, the Forest goalkeeper, that was his 7th clean sheet of the season. Forest now 3rd, they've won 4 in a row, and even Nuno said after the game, it was very important. We cannot ignore Mats made huge saves to keep us in the game. So this is what I mean. It wasn't like Spurs couldn't find any way in front of goal. They did, but they didn't put the ball away. That's the key thing. They didn't do it, so it meant nothing at the end of it all. And Archie Gray did an interview. He really does front up sometimes. He's 18 years old. Honestly, he looked devastated. I'm not saying he was about to cry or anything, but his face was he just looked like an 18-year-old who just lost a game of football that he was really, really angry and upset about. And he said, not the result that you want. We played some good football at times, but it's not good enough. I thought we could have been a bit more patient at times and stuck to our principles, but that's football sometimes, especially when a team sits deep. They did well. They did what they do well, so fair play to them, but we need to be better. And I kind of wondered that. When he said that, I thought we could have been a bit more patient at the time and stuck to our principles. It sounds like he's just come out of the team meeting with Postecoglou, but he actually hadn't. He actually said at the end of the interview he hadn't even been in the dressing room yet to kind of see what the other players were saying after the game. He'd kind of come out straight away to do some presumably broadcast interviews in the club one. So, it's just such a mature head he is. And it was, I think what was frustrating about this was that Postecoglou was able to put 3 fresher pairs of legs into the team. He had Bentancur back from suspension finally, Destiny Doggy was back in there from injury, and Brennan Johnson got his first start in a little while. I think some of those look rusty. Actually, all 3 probably look rusty in certain aspects. You could say Johnson with his shooting, Doggy with some of his defending, and Bentancur, just his all-round play at times was a bit rusty, but we'll talk about him in a second. The rest of the squad, or the rest of the starting 11, certainly looked tired at times. Mainly midfield and going forward, I thought Sarr started to tire again, even though he only played an hour the other day. Kulusevski is just... They're running him into the ground. They really are. Kulusevski and Solanke, there's just not really alternatives to them. That they're so important to the team. And right now, when you haven't got Richarlison and you haven't got Odegaard in there to kind of change up for both of them, it's just causing all kinds of issues, really. And they both of them obviously scored a fair few recent goals. Decky scores 5 games in a row. They just look knackered. They had good moments, especially Kulusevski, but yeah, they look knackered. And Sonny, he's got 3 goals and 2 assists in his past 6 games, but he was just struggling for ideas. Played a couple of key passes, but ultimately, he's in this little stage at the moment, Sonny, where, I'm sorry to repeat myself because I've said this so many times, but the best version of Sonny is the one that just everything he does is instinctive and it's great. And when he has a little bit too much time on the ball to think about it, he maybe doesn't make the best decisions. And he did a few of those moments again yesterday. It is yesterday now, where he just took too long over a pass, an opportunity was gone. Or early on, let's say he had a shot that was quite tame and straight at the keeper when actually Johnson was free to his right-hand side. I have no doubt that he'll get back to his goal-scoring ways, but this was not one of his better performances. But he wasn't alone. Everyone was... there were a lot of players that were... I'm trying to think of my player ratings. I can't remember if anyone got over a 6, and there were a lot of 4s in there. Yeah, it wasn't a good all-round performance. It was almost enough to get a point, had Johnson put one of those away, but not good enough on the whole. And like I said about Benzema, there's an irony to the fact that he was the fresh legs in the engine room. He actually, I don't know, my voice is breaking, but like the 2 Europa League games he's played, looks like a player who's only played 2 matches in 9 games. It kind of looks that way. He looks a bit off the boil, and he looks like he needs to get back in the groove of rhythm and sharpness that he was before that suspension. It just shows, just so frustrating that he just said something so stupid in the summer, because if he hadn't, I think maybe even Spurs' season would be in a different way right now. And I'm not pinning that on him and what he did or anything like that. I just think having that extra body in midfield, whoever it would be, would just give that little bit of breathing space for Postecoglou and his selections. I mean, there were a few positives. I did think Archie Gray was good again. I thought he worked really hard. I think he's just an incredibly quick learner, and he looks more like a centre-back with each passing performance, and that's massive credit to him, because that must be such a different role to anything he's played before. And I thought Dragishin, until the unfortunate moment towards the end, battled away with Wood really well, and I thought he did well. Both of them went on these little surging runs out of the box at times, past a couple of players, which Postecoglou loved. He was applauding them for it, because it just was proactive and it took players out of the game as well. And obviously, we know Dragishin had to come off towards the end. Was it 84th minute, I think? If he has to go down injured and come off, it's not good, because he is a big, powerful guy. And unfortunately, it's been one of those things that it's probably been coming, hasn't it? He's been having to play every single minute as the only natural centre-back, trying to sweep up everything. We're not saying his performance has been perfect. He's had a couple of games where he's been wobbly. He's had some games where he's been really good. This one was more decent, I would say. But you're always putting him in the firing line constantly. You're putting him in physical situations, where he's going to get a whack at some point. And here it came to his ankle. Postecoglou just said he doesn't kind of know where it's at right now, but it was bad enough that he had to come off and couldn't continue. So, I mean, Ben Davies' return to fitness comes at a helpful time. He was due to come back to training on, I think, Christmas Eve and the evening Christmas Day training they were going to do. So hopefully he's in a position where he can, he can be part of things as well, just when they need him to. But we'll see. It's going to be. I wrote in my kind of predicted team before the game. I wrote that Archie Gray. He'll play. Hopefully for him, the last time he'll have to play in the centre back position. Maybe I jinxed it. Maybe it's my fault. Lo and behold, he's going to have to play now until either Romero van der Ven gets back or they can get someone through the door to help them out. Because, yeah, it's just a desperate situation at the back there. It's mad. Seen some links with Ben Godfrey recently, and from what we understand, that's not a player Spurs are looking to sign in this upcoming winter window. I can kind of understand from a point of view that he plays a centre back and a left back as well, and I think that would be great for Spurs if they can sign someone who can play both those positions. Speaking to Guesty, who obviously knows him very well from his Everton time, he said on the ball and passing wise, he's probably not what Spurs need in that respect. But yeah, from what we understand, he's not someone that Spurs are likely to go for in this January window. But you would think it's going to be someone that can be versatile because they just need the bodies right now that can play in various roles. In terms of other positives, Lucas Berval, I thought he came on and did well. Another really positive cameo. Used the word proactive just a moment ago. That kind of sums him up quite nicely in his performance. I think he used the ball really well. Was constantly trying to prod it forward and make things happen and turn players and stuff like that as well. I wonder whether we'll see him get a bit of a bigger role against Wolves on Sunday because, yeah, he just looks like he's got some fresh ideas, and that's kind of what Spurs need right now. It's not just a physical tiredness for some of these players, it's a mental one. And just those final ball, sometimes the build-up play was quite nice against Forest, and then it got to the final third and it just died a death. That someone ran into someone. Decky did that a fair few times. You could tell Decky was tired because he kept running into people rather than using his strength and kind of getting by them, gliding by them like he does. Jed Spence was positive until those final moments. Had to play on both flanks again, and I thought he did pretty well. Linked up the play quite well, got back as much as he could. There's some moments where defensively he was caught out a little bit, but that's going to happen as he's trying to get back into the rhythm. He's a guy that hasn't really played a lot of football other than the spell in Italy, really, was the kind of... And even then, that's not week in, week out, but he played a fair bit. But yeah, as a regular starter playing week in, week out, he hasn't had that for a long time. And it was an irony, obviously, that he's going back to Forest, which was the last place he did that in their promotion-winning season. And unfortunately, it all ended in a bit of a mess for him because he got a silly yellow card for like lobbing the ball on the floor and away, in a sense. And then he kind of just stopped a break at the end by bringing someone down, and he kind of protested as if like, what? It was like, nah, he did kind of go in to get it. So he's going to get a game's rest, but it's of no real help to Spurs at a time when they really don't want to be missing any players. So yeah, it looks like it'll be back to Porro and Udogie on Sunday against Wolves. And yeah, Postecoglou came in for his press conference afterwards. He was clearly quite down. You could see. He said, it's obviously disappointing, the defeat, a tight game. It was never going to be the kind of game where there would be too many chances. I still thought we had a fair chunk of it where we could have got something out of the game, but it was always going to be a tight game here. It was a disappointing goal we conceded, but aside from that, the boys worked hard and we tried to generate as many opportunities as we could, considering the context of the game and how Forest play, but we just couldn't get over the top of them. We're asking a lot of this group of players. A lot of these guys are playing every 3 days. It's only logical that they're not going to be at their sharpest, but they're trying, and that's all I can ask of them. And he was asked about the fact that Spurs have been scoring in almost every game, but they couldn't today. He said, look, it's a bit like I said, the game state. I kind of knew that if they could get a goal up, it was going to get even tighter for us to find space behind them. It was never going to be a game with a lot of opportunities. Having said that, I still thought we created some good ones, and we just weren't able to capitalise on them. Keeper has pulled off a couple of good saves to keep them in the game. We just needed a goal to break them open, and we didn't seem to get it. Yeah, I don't think I can argue with too much of that. I think Spurs did create a couple of chances, but it's their own fault, really, for allowing that sloppy goal that they conceded, because as soon as that happened, Forest did just sit back in this really compact, organised fashion. And then it becomes a bit of a training session to try and break. I mean, the possession stats, meaningless, but they were I think 70% Spurs possession. I think they had something like 600 and something passes to Forest 200. It's like, that's great, and you're controlling a bulk of the game, but if you can't control it for the full 95, I think it was in the end, it's just that one chance that's needed by the opposition. A little bit's been made of Postecoglou's press conference after the game because it only lasted 2 minutes, but that wasn't his fault. It actually wasn't. It was the media, and myself included. I definitely put myself at the forefront of being partly responsible for that as well. He had fewer radio and TV interviews to do before he came down for the press conference than recent games, because higher profile games, United, Liverpool, there's lots and lots of foreign media as well, and he has to do all these kind of row of mic'd up interviews in front of a camera or a radio stuff for them before he can even get to the press conference. So sometimes we can be waiting half an hour, 40 minutes sometimes for a manager to come through. Whereas on this occasion, he just suddenly walked in really, really quickly. I had just got into the room. There's some journalists were up in the press box still working away. Personally, I have to set up just my own kind of insight that no one really needs to know, but just kind of get an idea of it. A press conference live blog kind of writing from it, and I was midway through even setting that up, and that's normally well set up and published by the time he comes in, so I can put out the updates. And I was still setting that up, so I was playing catch up when he walked in. You might even see from the video, none of us even got our dictaphones on the table, which we normally always do to record it. We were like, "Whoa, he's here!" and I put our things down, just dictaphones like around us on the floor. And as me trying to kind of type stuff up, hoping other people are going to ask questions so I can just kind of keep working and getting the stuff going. And as it was, there were just not many people in the room. A few questions were asked. I think it was 4 or 5. I can't remember how many. But there was also a sense among some of us, because this was my thinking. My thinking was, well, I'm going to write up my blog thing that I've got to write, and then I'll put in the updates from what you're saying to other people. But ultimately, we've got a press conference tomorrow, or today now for everyone, at Hotspur Way, a much longer press conference, a pre-match one for Wolves. This is a ridiculous nature now of what we're... it's not, there's so many matches that we're having press conferences every, 2 days at the moment. It's just ridiculous. We're hearing too much from him. He's seeing us too much. There's so much repetition that's going to take place. So many questions that can ultimately just be repetitive or annoying. You're not going to get too much new stuff other than injury news and maybe something different about the January transfer window. Maybe. We've had a few decent quotes on that so far. But yeah, ultimately, it's too much. Even as someone in the media myself. So a lot of us, I think, who are regulars in that room were thinking, right, well, we've got a press conference. I'm not actually at it today, but Guesty's going to it. So it ended up with this. And also, I should stress, he's far better and thoughtful in his answers in his pre-match press conference than he is after a match. After a match, he's got a little bit more of the kind of emotion of a game in him, and he clearly is just fed up if they've lost and just wants to go. He's quite good when they've won, but if they've lost, he's a little bit more just kind of wants to go off and stew and think about things. And whereas by the time the next press conference comes around, he's quite thoughtful and interesting and insightful in his answers. So I think sometimes if you've got a question, you save it for the pre-match one. And I know it can be frustrating for people that want answers on stuff, but we kind of know sometimes that you're going to get a bit of a rubbish answer out of him. Not because he's rubbish or anything in terms of, we know he's quite good communication-wise, but you're going to get a better one if he's had a little bit of time to kind of collect his thoughts. So anyway, the whole meaning of all of that was the fact that we ended up with quite a quick press conference. But I saw some media outlets were kind of making out like Postecoglou dashed out, not stormed out, but quickly got out of his press conference, when actually it was more that he wasn't asked many questions because there weren't many of us in the room. Some of us, me, was still trying to catch up and doing work and hoping others were going to ask questions. So we suddenly had this moment where all the questions stopped, and it was a bit like, okay, thank you very much. And the press conference ended, it was like, okay. So yeah, it wasn't his fault. It was completely the media, including myself's fault. Not the ones who asked questions. They did their job. But yeah, so Archie Gray, again, was asked about the tiredness of the players in his Spurs interview that he did after the game, and he doesn't want to lean on it as an excuse. He was, you could see kind of as the question was being asked, he was like, really like, I don't want to put any excuses out there. He was like, obviously it's difficult with the amount of games that we have, but I'm not going to stand here and complain about it because as a young player, it's something I want. Because I think he's played 20 games now this season for Spurs. I'm not going to stand here and complain because it's something I want. For some people, it's tough, and for me, sometimes it's tough. But I'm not going to moan about that. It wasn't good enough from us today, and we'll work hard to bounce back from it. But the truth is this kind of injury crisis that Spurs are having, especially with having so few players in certain positions, mainly centre-back and up front, it's really in danger of derailing any chance Postecoglou has to succeed at the club. It just is. It's just come at such a bad time for him. I mean, to have all four of his centre-backs out and his first choice by a country mile goalkeeper out, that's just something that other managers at clubs aren't dealing with right now. It is a ridiculous situation. And I know there's other aspects to it. I know there's other elements of the Postecoglou style and the system people don't like and think that he can change or adapt or tweak or whatever you want to call it. But ultimately, if you lose all four of your centre-backs and your first-choice goalkeeper, that's just going to harm any manager out there. It just is. It's a killer, really. It potentially could be a kind of killer for his Spurs kind of career, really, if it kind of continues in this way. And even just the inability to change up the attacking options. You know, we spoke about Richarlison, Wilson-Odobert, even Mikey Moore. You know, I know he's only 17, but he's a very talented young lad. And if you have him coming off the bench, there's going to be moments in games where he can create stuff against tired players or start against teams as well. Just give something different, a little bit of magic and fearlessness that players like that bring. So yeah, they need help. Postecoglou needs help and he needs it quickly. That's the key right now. You know, he's been speaking in recent days about having had meetings with Johan Langer, the technical director at Spurs, and really planning through the January transfer window what they can do. But it's time to execute those plans. It is, and as quickly as possible, because there's no time to kind of hang around on this. Other than a brief 6-day rest between the Wolves and Newcastle matches, which will feel like a 3-week stay in the Bahamas for Spurs, quite frankly, relatively right now, the fixture schedule just continues at this ridiculous breakneck pace. They've got a game pretty much every 3 to 4 days, most weeks, other than one, I think, until the start of March. They've just got to keep going. I've seen people saying, yeah, but everyone's got to deal with that. Well, first off, not every club is dealing with that at all. Spurs are going to come up against quite a lot of clubs that are only playing one game a week. But on top of that, all of those other clubs aren't doing it with so many players out. It's all very well saying, you know, they've got to play a certain amount of games. But if you can rotate 6, 7, 8 of your players for these games, then they're going to be fresher. If you're playing mostly 8 or 9 of the same players for each game, it's piling up and they're accumulating these minutes. And like Pedro Porro had to be rested today. He's played something like 1,800 more minutes for the club, more than anyone else. Solanke and Kulusevski were the next. I think Solanke and Kulusevski will probably be closing in on his number of minutes. Porro is the most kind of in the whole squad. And they're going to end up getting injured. They just are. That's why, for me, and look, I know not everyone shares this opinion, but for me, Daniel Levy he must be surely reluctant to go down his well-trodden path of booting the manager out and just starting the whole saga all over again. Look, I'm recording this at night. By the time this goes out in the morning, who knows? Who knows what happens at Tottenham? He might have just decided to do exactly that again. I really hope he doesn't, because it's a bit like quitting a computer game because you're struggling, starting from the beginning again, and then only just realize you get to the same difficult level you couldn't get past again, so you just go toward the restart button and press it again. And it's a bit like you're doomed to keep repeating the same mistakes over and over again if you don't find a different way, learn a way to get past these kind of blockages each time. Any new head coach coming to the Spurs scenario is going to find themselves in exactly the same scenario as Postecoglou is, with the same availability problems. But on top of that, they'll have to build a whole new squad again. Oh, honestly, it is the Roy Hodgson meme. That's exactly what Spurs are like when they do that. You just kind of, it's just starting over and over and over and over again. Yeah, and also it'd be costly. It's more costly to do that as well, because players that fit Postecoglou may well not fit the next manager. Yeah, and also a new manager having to totally refit or start to refit a squad in a January window. That's even more difficult. I think Ruben Amorim's going to find this at United. They're in 14th place. They're having big problems because the squad does not fit him in any shape or form. And they've now kind of got to go into the January window looking to make big changes. And it's not the window to do that. So few clubs want to part with their players in January because there's so many different things going on. Some good quotes, actually, of reasoning why that is from Postecoglou coming up a little bit as well. Ruben Amorim looks shocked by the brutality of the Premier League and how unforgiving it is. Honestly, it feels like he's already aged within a couple of weeks. Yeah. And I feel like with Postecoglou, not only does he need new faces, he needs them early. I kind of feel like he just has to be a bit more selfish about his time at Spurs now. That's kind of a key thing for me. He's been so much at pains to stress, really, that everything he's trying to do for Tottenham is for the long term. And he doesn't want to look at any short-term games that purely help himself. He said, himself, like last season, I could have just kept Harry Kane if I was only thinking of myself and not the club. Debatable now whether that might actually help the club as well, really. But there you go. It wouldn't have helped Harry Kane, probably. But yeah, I kind of feel like he now needs to look out for himself. I mean, you just think back to earlier this season when I asked him about, like, why are you going to buy another centre-back kind of thing, or why didn't you buy another centre-back, I think I asked him. And he said about it, he'd only buy the right centre-back if one was available. Otherwise, he's just blocking the path of Luka Vuskovic. Scored a brilliant scissors kick yesterday. I think it was his 6th of the season. And Ashley Phillips. He said he didn't want to block their path just for the sake of bringing in another body. But look, as it's turned out, the cruel gods of football fate have slapped Postecoglou right in the face over that. And clearly, had he brought in another centre-back, there would have been less issues right now. And so has the call, whether it's his, as he claims, or the club's, to bring in so many teenagers for the long term, rather than experienced professionals for the now. Again, it's come back to haunt him. And he's kind of... I'm trying to think. I think there were some quotes he said recently where he's kind of admitted that maybe they now need a few older heads in this window. Of course, Heung-min coming along as well. He'll add another body to the attack. But again, he's one needs time to adapt and will be for the long-term future mainly rather than now. But hopefully he'll be able to contribute in the now as well. But yeah, I mean, he has to look at it and you see Christian Mara van der Ven, they're still a little while away from coming back. And even when they do return, their recent comebacks proved that, can you even trust that they're going to be there for a prolonged period of time? I'm hoping they are, but you just don't know right now. Mickey van der Ven is obviously having some hamstring struggles in the last couple of years. Romero's having a fair few muscle problems as well. And the same applies to Richarlison. It kind of feels, I don't think this is actually the case, but it feels like Richarlison has watched Postecoglou's side more than he's actually played in it. He needs to be bringing in more defenders that can play centre-back and probably left-back as well. He needs to be bringing in another attacker that can play as a centre-forward and probably as a winger as well, a bit like Richarlison can do. Whether it is loan players for the now, just to bolster it for the short term, and that is a short-term way of looking at it, if that's all they can get. Or go out and spend the right money on the right players, or might be spend more money on the right players because you need to get them in, and the selling club knows that. Because, I was trying to think about it. Last time we really had January signings that made a huge boost and changed the season, it's probably Decky and Bentancur. It's probably the last time I can remember that happening. Spurs aren't normally big January window people, or January window club. Mainly because, yes, it is more difficult to find players in that window, but that window proved that you could find 2 season changes if you get it right. And that's kind of what they need to do again. even if it's one season changer and one squad player that actually also indirectly helps you change your season because it gives you another body in order to rotate. I asked Postecoglou ahead of this game on the Christmas Eve press conference we had how important it was to not only get the right players but get them in early. And he kind of nodded. He said that is the balancing act. You just don't want to panic and bring in anyone that you don't think will help our cause in the back half of the year. But I think we've already shown we're pretty methodical and prudent about our work. We'll make sure we bring somebody in who is going to help us. He was asked later in the press conference about more about transfers. And he said, we'll just see, mate. I'm kind of hoping I've been really good this year because I've got a fair Christmas list for Santa. So I'll see what I get. And he was reminded that he said a couple of days back, I've been a naughty little boy. It was a really weird response. I think he was trying to do Life of Brian, I think it was. And he was trying to go down the line of, like, I'm not the Messiah, I'm a naughty little boy. Or he's been a naughty little boy. Was he even a little boy? I can't remember quite. I haven't seen the film for so long. You love it as well, and I can't remember it. He's not the Messiah. He's a naughty boy, naughty little boy. Oh, remind me in the comments. You can tell I'm tired. I can't even get movie quotes right. I'm definitely tired. So yeah, he was reminded. Well, you did say you're a naughty little boy, and he was like, oh yeah, touche. That's fair. Yeah, maybe I'm not going to get my list off Santa. Maybe I'm on the naughty list. But Santa is Santa Levy. Let's be honest. He needs to help Postecoglou. Otherwise, Spurs season could be over within 5 weeks. If they keep going as they're going and just running on fumes and more players getting injured and not able to play the Postecoglou way because they're just not able to, it's just all going to kind of splutter to a stop. And I mean, he admitted that while it might be difficult to improve his starting 11 in January because those sort of players might not be available, the clubs might not let them go, he feels, be able to bolster his options across the squad. He said, I think improving the team may be a bit challenging, but improving the depth of our squad, I think there's always possibilities out there. I think it's a bit more challenging this January because of the way European football is set up. Because sometimes in January, you would find maybe a couple of clubs out of the Champions League contention that were thinking, well, you know what? We're not in the Champions League, so maybe just release a couple from our roster. So that doesn't exist now because all European competitions are still kind of in the balance. So that probably adds another layer of difficulty to it. But we'll endeavour because I think there's definitely a need for us to reinforce. We'll just see how successful we are in that. And yeah, look, I know there's people that have made up their minds on Postecoglou. I've seen reasonably well kind of discussed out thoughts on why they think he shouldn't be the manager. I've seen I've had a lot today of horrible kind of responses that are like very kind of nasty and personal things about Postecoglou. I don't understand the need for that. I don't get it. Why do you need to kind of comment about someone's appearance or weight or something when you're discussing a manager of a football club? I just don't get it. I don't get it. But that's the thing. I don't know. As soon as I see that, I just kind of instantly dismiss it as a kind of as something I just want to see. I don't get it. I know there's an element of anger and frustration mixed up in it, but it's still just so unnecessary. But yeah, and I still see, a lot of kind of fans that want him to continue. It's the issue for him is results. That's it. It's like we know what he's going through. We know the injury situation. We know it's very difficult for him right now. But the trouble is, history only remembers the results. That's the problem. And they're in this situation now, where I really feel he deserves to be judged over a run of games where he has a healthy complement of players to be able to use. He's had games where he's had a strong 11, but I don't always feel that he's had like a strong squad to be able to change it, and that might be in-game management, whatever. I just feel it's just been such a messy 18 months, really. But this season especially has just been horrendous, and kind of halfway through last season as well. Look, ultimately, whatever happens next, as it always is at Tottenham Hotspur, will be decided by Daniel Levy. He will be the one that says what happens next. Will he try to help the absolutely battered and bruised Postecoglou up off the floor with quick, decisive backing in the transfer market? Or will Postecoglou just become the latest person to fall through the cogs and gears of the Tottenham Hotspur machine? It is worth noting, of course, talking of Nuno and seeing him today, since he left Spurs in 2021 after that 4-month stint, he's won the Saudi Pro League title, and now he has Nottingham Forest, only promoted a couple of years back, sitting third in the Premier League. I would think he'll feel somewhat vindicated, even though he's a very modest man, and I presume he would not say that ever publicly. But it is worth looking at what he's done since he's left Spurs, and fair play to him. You might even want to look across to Italy and Turkey and look and see Antonio Conte and Jose Mourinho at Atalanta and Napoli and Fenerbahce, respectively, both second in their both tables in those countries. I think Napoli are only a couple of points off the top. Fenerbahce are a little bit more points, but technically have only lost 2 games. That's how tight that kind of league is. And look, whether those Postecoglou's 3 most recent predecessors at Spurs were the right fits for the club is another thing. But ultimately, it certainly seems things have been easier for them to succeed elsewhere, as they were before they came to Spurs as well. And, Spurs right now are 10 points off 4th place, 6 points off the top 6. They just need a shot in the arm quickly. They need some kind of adrenaline boost. And for me, the unavailability, the fixture list, it kind of shows that right now that shot in the arm is, in terms of players and depth to the squad, it's not the traditional sellotape answer that Spurs always come out with of get rid of that manager, chuck another one into this kind of chaos and watch them try to grasp at anything to stay afloat. It's so tried and tested, and the testers prove that it hasn't worked each time. And if they don't help Postecoglou on this occasion, then he's still got strong supporters within this Spurs squad. If they don't help him when he's up against it, you can probably pretty much safely assume that, like those 3 of his predecessors, we'll see Postecoglou succeeding somewhere else. And it just seems to be becoming the Tottenham way. Someone does well somewhere else, bring them in, watch them kind of struggle at Spurs through various factors. It can be from above, it can be other things like Postecoglou's having right now in terms of the injuries, but also probably the squad that he said he was happy with, but clearly with this, it just cannot sustain this ridiculous level of injuries and unavailability. And yeah, it just all means that Sunday's game just feels huge against Wolves. It really does. It feels like a big game. They're obviously on the up. I think they've won their past 2 under their new manager, and they're coming to Spurs. So it's a press conference today, like I say, at Hotspur Way. Guesty's there. I wanted to kind of do this so I could get it out early rather than kind of having to wait till late afternoon. And it may come back to bite me. It could be that, there's bigger news in that. If there's something big, of course, I'll do another video. But ultimately, I just needed to get this off my chest about this game because there's definitely aspects to it that I think are going to be overblown. There are definitely aspects of it which were frustrating. And I just want to see what happens next and whether Spurs actually get behind the manager for a change and realise why things are happening rather than just looking at it and just thinking, yeah, it's not working, change again, like a robotic stance that just seems to get them absolutely nowhere. I will try and do a loan roundup at some point as well because there's been some really good stuff going on with the loan players. Josh Keeley and Jamie Donnelly are just smashing it at Leyton Orient. Josh Keeley, I think, has got something like 9 clean sheets in 11 games or 12 games. I think I might have it somewhere, actually. The exact thing. It is... Where is it here? I had it written down somewhere else. Sorry, I want to get it right because it's very impressive. It is... 8 clean sheets out of 11 games, which is brilliant. And Jamie Donnelly's got himself back in the Orient squad and he's doing very, very well, which is brilliant for them and him. I think George Abbott got his first league goal as well for Notts County, so that's brilliant. I will do a proper loan roundup on how everyone's doing. That might actually be a good one for next week when we do finally have those crazy days in between games between the Wolves and the Newcastle game. But yeah, So look, I know there's going to be a lot of stuff in the comments. There's going to be a lot of varied comments and different opinions on stuff. I'm fascinated to see what the atmosphere is going to be like at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium on Sunday. I think there'll be different aspects to it. I'm intrigued to see what backing Postecoglou gets, because that's going to play a big part for him if the crowd is still behind him, and if the players obviously are still trying to show that they want to play his way, even through the knackeredness. And because these are two tricky home games. Wolves now has become tricky because they're back in form, or they've found a different way of playing. And Newcastle as well. I just realised as I was saying that some people may well say, look, Wolves have done it. Why can't Spurs? But Wolves have a very set style when they kind of fit a new manager to fit that very set style. Spurs, every time they get a manager, it's just and it's just they don't do it in the other way. But yeah, right, I'm gonna go. I've got to go to. I've got to upload this and then go to sleep. It should be up early in the morning if you're watching it then, and hopefully nothing major has happened. And hopefully things can turn back in a different direction on Sunday, and we can start going into 2025 with a little bit more positive momentum. Because we were talking about this. One of the journalists I was speaking with, I think it was Tom Barkley, was saying that in isolation, the performance against Forest wasn't the worst thing in the world, because Forest are having a brilliant season. Spurs didn't play that badly at all, but Forest just did what they've been doing this season, and they squeezed out a 1-0 win and kind of kept themselves very compact. And you could probably say, okay, fair enough, but it's just in isolation. But if you take it as part of the whole, it's just another disappointing kind of result for Spurs. So I get it. I get why there's a lot of disappointment. I'm sure Postecoglou does as well. And if you take it as an overall, the stats aren't good enough. And as I said in the last video, managers have gone in far better positions in the league than Postecoglou is. And that gap is starting to form, which they really have to kind of try and bridge. However, whoever you bring in there right now is just going to face exactly the same problems he's coming up against. Even if they decide, we can't get anyone right now, we're going to do it at the end of the season, let's say bring in Ryan Mason for his third caretaker stint, he's just going to be up against the exact same issues that Postecoglou is facing right now. So I think you might as well just give him the time to try and get through this and see what's on the other side, because you'll never know if you don't. Whereas I think if you do change, the more likely it is it's just more of the same for now, regardless of who's in that position. Because they could be completely different in their approach, but if they don't got the players to do anything, it's not going to be the proper version. It's very much like Ruben Amorim is facing right now at United. We kind of brought him in, and he's just, honestly, like I said, he looks battered already. I'm sure he'll be a very good manager for them, probably maybe from next season onwards, or it may even be from the January window onwards if they spend big money to try and change things for him. But I want to see Spurs, do some good stuff in January and be proactive and be strong in the market. And if they've got to pay a bit more to get someone in, even if it is a loan with an option to buy or whatever, as long as it's someone that can come in and really improve what Postecoglou wants to do, it's on them. I think that needs to be watched just as closely as things that are happening with the manager, to be honest. I think it's all part of the one package. But there you go. Right, time to head off. I'm starting to waffle, as some people might say I do from the start, but I am getting a bit... but there you go. Right, I will be back on probably Monday, I think, at some point to talk about the Wolves game. Hoping I don't have to jump on and do a video about anything else in the meantime. And I shall talk to you then. As always, stay healthy, stay safe. I shall catch you later. Goodbye.